The Democrats, well, panic. I actually do think it's panic is starting to set in here, and it's not good. I want to play you this snippet. This is Jonathan Martin, the reporter he was with. Jonathan Martin, is he back at Politico? He's somewhere now. Jonathan Martin, we used to be at the New York Times. He was at National Review, went to Politico, went to New York Times. Where is he now? I don't know, but he is on TV. Listen to this.
Well, I think that let's start with Democrats. I mean, I think with Biden, for a lot of Democrats and a lot of independents, even Republicans who voted for him, John, the bargain was essentially, he's an emergency break glass candidate who gets Trump out of office, ends COVID, mission accomplished. And I think that there's voters in this country who didn't think he'd run for a second term, by which time he was pushing into his mid-80s. And so I think that's the fundamental challenge for Biden, is that the economy by every metric is improving, but yet you don't see a corresponding bounce with his numbers. Now, that may come later. It may be a sort of late developing metric, but right now it's not there. And if you're Democrats, that has to be concerning. And eventually, do you come to terms with the fact, John, that voters are judging Biden separately than they're judging the health of the economy because they've just moved on? And so I think that raises the question of, if Trump is the de facto nominee, and you put up those numbers on the screen, they're national numbers, they're not Iowa numbers, grain of salt. But if Trump wins the first 3 or 4 states in February of next year, and he's the de facto nominee in February of 24, I just think it's really difficult to see a scenario where there's not some kind of a moderate third-party candidate who gets into the race, because there's going to be a lot of voters in this country who were effectively homeless.
Yes, there are a lot of voters who are effectively homeless. If you're a Democrat, if you're a non-Trump voter, you need to hear this. The New York Times Siena College poll, one of the most accurate pollsters, I might add, in 2022. I think they were they led the pack in terms of accuracy in 2022. Joe Biden and Donald Trump are tied right now. Now, I let me put this in perspective for you. Joe Biden and Donald Trump are tied at a time Donald Trump has been indicted twice, has 2 more indictments possibly coming, is out of money as a political campaign, is deeply unpopular with independents, and he's tied with Joe Biden. Do you know one of the reasons that Donald Trump is tied with Joe Biden? It's because Donald Trump's populism, it is appealing to Black and Hispanic working class voters. That's right. Donald Trump is gaining among men, Black voters, Hispanic voters, and low-income, non-college educated voters. He's building a coalition of the working class across racial lines. There's a story in Bloomberg News today. It echoes one of the stories of the Washington Post we talked about yesterday. This is the headline: Biden needs Black voters in Georgia. They're feeling pretty lukewarm. Let me replay you this clip from Karl Rove from yesterday.
6% fewer 18 to 29-year-old voters in Arizona failed to turn out. He loses Arizona. 1% fewer Black voters in Georgia turn out to vote in 2024 than voted in 2020. He loses Georgia. So even on the margins, these groups that are not enthusiastic or maybe willing to go to Cornel West or maybe to contemplate staying home, that's the problem for the Democrats.
And you notice Karl Rove's language is not that they'll vote for Trump. Some of them will, but a lot of them will just stay home. President Biden's path to victory in Georgia, a key battleground in his reelection bid, is imperiled by lukewarm support from Black voters. In the Atlanta metro area, home to the second largest Black population in the United States, Black residents said the pain of inflation and setbacks on policies such as student loan forgiveness have left them with misgivings about Biden's candidacy. The tepid sentiment is a vulnerability for the president in an election that will likely hinge on voter turnout in a handful of swing states. It highlights the risk that uninspired Black voters stay home or look to third-party alternatives. Some of them will vote for Trump, though. Young black men and Hispanic voters are more and more moving to Donald Trump. It's true. The Democrats do not wish to acknowledge this, but it is true. The Democrats pretend it's not true, but it's true. Black voters and Hispanic voters as a larger share are shifting to the Democratic Party. Men are shifting. White voters are shifting slightly. Black voters by a few percentage points. Hispanic voters by a few percentage points. The 45 to 64-year-old crowd shifting as well. White voters with a bachelor degree shifting ever so slightly to the GOP. Non-white voters with a bachelor degree shifting slightly to the GOP. Non-white voters with no college degree shifting significantly to the GOP, as are voters who make less than $50,000 a year. In fact, all of the shifts are benefiting Donald Trump and the GOP. And Donald Trump is now tied with Joe Biden. There's something else going on with the black vote, though, that the Democrats are missing, and it has everything to do with Hunter Biden. And it's palpable when you talk to black voters. Live by intersectional politics, Democrats. Die by intersectional politics. You people on the left have been lecturing all of America about white privilege, about power dynamics, about white people getting to get away with things black people could never get away with, about disparate sentences, about different treatment, and along comes Hunter Biden, and all the Democrats are circling the wagons defending him and defending Joe Biden. There's not a black voter in America, other than Barack Obama, who can look at the situation and think, my kid would not get the pass that Joe Biden's son is getting. And many of them, I suspect, also think, I would never enable my kid the way Joe Biden enabled his kid. There are plenty of families in America who struggle with drug-addicted children. You don't see any of them enabling their son the way Joe Biden did. And Hunter Biden gets a pass, and the Democrats give him a pass. The Democrats give Joe Biden a pass while lecturing us all about privilege in this country, white privilege in particular, systemic racism in this country. Black voters and Hispanic voters are looking at what's going on with Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and saying, are they that tone deaf? On top of that, they also see that it's under the Democratic policies of Joe Biden that they're falling further behind. It's under the policies, the economic policies of Joe Biden, that the big get big and the small stay small. It's under the Democratic policies of Joe Biden that see massive jumps in gas prices happening right now in America. Massive, massive spikes in gas prices right now. Happen in America right now. Still inflation very high. Cost of living up. Groceries still high, bread prices still high, all under Joe Biden. And Joe Biden and the Democrats are trying to force all these poor non-white Americans into battery-powered vehicles they can't afford, that can't get them to work. They're starting to rebel against the Democratic Party regime that they have for so long been a part of. Donald Trump's message resonates. Now, there's an upside for the Democrats. Donald Trump is out of money. You can't run a presidential campaign without money, and this is a problem. Donald Trump's Political Action Committee started this year with $105 million in the bank. $105 million in the bank. Now only has $4 million. If you have been giving money to Donald Trump, you haven't been funding his political campaign, you've been paying his lawyers. In fact, his PAC, Save America, had to reimburse $60 million because of legal fees. It had to return $60 million to another Trump group in order to pay legal fees. the Democrats are bleeding Donald Trump dry with indictments. Now, you Republicans, you can say it's unfair, but it's the reality here. So as much as people don't like Joe Biden and his policies, and as much as Black and Hispanic voters are turning off, when you've got a Donald Trump indicted in 3 or 4 places around the country, having to go to court instead of campaign, and his campaign has been bled dry by the lawyers to pay their bills, it still puts the Republicans in a difficult footing if he's the nominee, because he can't campaign and he's got to persuade more people to vote for him, and he won't even be able to afford an ad campaign because of all the money going to the lawyers. He started with under $5 million. He's down to $4 million. You can say it's part of the Democratic plan and all of that stuff, but you still do need money to campaign for president. That's about the only saving grace the Democrats have right now. Y'all, again, if you're a Democrat, if you're a partisan progressive listening to me right now, you need to understand that, not the Republicans, the Democrats, you need to understand this, that Joe Biden and Donald Trump are tied in the New York Times Siena poll. The most accurate polling firm of 2022 says they are tied. And they are tied because Black and Hispanic voters in particular are moving to the GOP because they're tired of the Democratic economic policies and they're tired of the Democratic crime policies. And I genuinely, truly do suspect, based on the underlying data, they're also really tired of Democrats lecturing us all about white supremacy and white privilege while bending over backwards to prop up Hunter Biden and his dad. Democrats in 2022 hit on a campaign strategy where they were going to elevate pro-Trump candidates into the election because they knew they would be easy to beat. And it worked. Around the country, the Democrats helped Republicans nominate pro-Trump candidates who independent voters and 13% of Republicans said, I can't vote for this person in good conscience. And the Democrats won. And so they decided they were going to do it again in 2024. And the problem for the Democrats is this time, a lot of the voters are like, you know what? I don't like either of these guys, but at least when Donald Trump was president, the economy didn't suck. Oh well, Democrats. Lesson learned.